Hey guys, it's Mike from Mike's Rockin' Relics, and a bit of a weird video for you today. The other day I was setting up to start this week's video and recording some things, and I was talking about a guitar. And it was going to be a video on this certain guitar, and it was a signature model from a jazz musician that I was going to talk about. And when I started to play the guitar, I sort of instantly just was realizing I'm not really in love with this instrument anymore. I just don't know. I like it. It plays great. There's nothing wrong with it, but it just wasn't hitting me anymore. And I decided to put it up for sale, and I sold it right away. So that video got shelved, and I thought, well, maybe I should talk a little bit about the process that I use for selling guitars, because there is a process to that and a way to go about doing that, and I thought it might be kind of cool to go just through my tips for how to successfully move on an instrument if you've sort of fallen out of love with it, or you need a switch, or you just need to free up some income too. So there's little tricks that I use and little things that I find help me move a guitar when I need to. So that's what we're going to talk about today on the show. Stay tuned. Okay, so this is just a little list of things that I've compiled that over the years, if I've had to sell an instrument, these are some things that have helped me kind of do that. And anybody in sales will tell you it's hard to sell anything. So any tips and things that you can use in your own dealings, I think, are a worthwhile thing to pass on. And selling things is hard. It's time consuming, and the market has to be timed properly, and you have to find the right buyer. And there's a lot that goes into that. So these are some things over the years that I have found have helped me to do this quicker and to be more effective at it. I am not a guitar store. I don't sell guitars all the time. I'm just a musician that likes collecting guitars, and sometimes you end up with too many, and sometimes maybe you start playing different styles of music, and there's certain instruments that you're just not using, and you can put that into other instruments that you're going to use more, and that's the case. Something I'm going to do here. So these are little things that I've along the way decided to kind of keep track of, and as I've sold instruments over the years, it's really helped me. So maybe it'll help you with a few things. But I'm certainly not an expert, and I'm not a store. So if there's anything I've missed here that's worked for you, please leave that in the comments. And let's go. Let's go with number one. So the first thing I like to make sure of, it kind of relates to the buying of guitars, and I like to make sure anything that I am bringing into my own studio, past whether or not I like it, obviously, and things like that, is whether or not this down the road will be something that if I need to part with it, I think I can. And I don't want something that is going to be unsaleable down the road, because inevitably everything eventually gets moved on unless it's passed down to another family member. You're a custodian of whatever this item is for a little while, and at some point you might want to get your money back out of it. So I try to just accumulate guitars that I'm going to use, so whether I'm performing or recording with them, or something that, if it's more collectible in nature, something that's a little more obscure, that you can't go into your local Guitar Center or Long and McQuaid and pick up, and the market's flooded with those. There's all kinds of that stuff out there, and when it becomes time to move something on, if you have to, you don't want to be competing with 100 others doing the same thing with the same guitar. So a good way to make sure that your listing, wherever you're doing it, stands out a little more is to have an instrument that is a little more unique. It's a little different. There's not a lot of them out there, and the people might be interested in it. So that's the type of guitar I look to pick up, and if I see it at a good price, I'll pick it up, and I might have it for years before I decide that that's probably enough for that one. But those are the guitars to look for and to pick up. So number one on my list is kind of to just start with unique, interesting items that are not only well made and good quality, but are also interesting. And price points are important. We're going to get to this in a second, but Just because it's not an expensive guitar does not mean it's not collectible or interesting or things like that. So that is number one. Number two is price point, and price point is important. There are different levels of guitar purchasers out there. There are people that want high-end, really expensive guitars. Um, there are people that want super high-end, really expensive guitars. There are people that also want low-end, budget-friendly, interesting guitars. And I've done just as well with those as anything bigger. Sometimes, there's a guy out there that likes to play on the weekends and he wants a guitar that's a little different, a little unique. And the $800 guitar does that just fine for them. So this is kind of an area where price it can be not just expensive guitars that everybody wants. Sometimes lower end guitars that are interesting. It kind of ties in with number one. More unique, interesting items. They don't have to be super expensive, but if they're good quality, have an interesting kind of feel and playability to them, or a look, then you're going to do just as well. So price point is important, and there are different buyers at different price points. The lower the price range, sometimes the more trouble you have with people ghosting you online and things like that, or not showing up for things, and that doesn't happen as much with the higher end stuff. Okay, the next thing is to use social media. Now, to me, the internet it's kind of one of those catch-22s. It's been horrible for people with knowledge, because if you have knowledge and you see a guitar in the wild and you think that's actually a really good deal for that guitar, I'm going to pick that up and maybe at some point sell it for a little more and make a little profit on it. That is getting harder to do because we're getting into this one price system where you can use Reverb or things like that online to check prices. And once that happens, it's pretty hard to kind of buy things and instantly make a profit on it. That's, so I feel for guitar stores, and you see a lot of guitar stores no longer carrying used guitars because everybody else is out of their garage. So that's a little bit of a thing. So with that, it's harder to find, instruments that are maintained properly in the wild sometimes, because it used to be a shop would back that up. They would do it, check the neck, check all that stuff on it, get the electronics all working, and then put it out for sale in their own store. If you're buying it in a parking lot, there's sometimes some problems with that. So that's kind of the negative. But the positive is you can sell your products, your guitars, to a large number of people in your area, and it's all readily available and it's easy to list. You can list on social media in about a minute and a half, and you can have that up for thousands of people at once to see. So I say use social media, use all the marketplaces and things like that you can. That's a great way to get the instruments out there, but be safe about it. I've done some things where I kind of look back and go, wow, I really shouldn't have been walking around there with that much cash or things like that. And so it is risky, and public places are better to meet up if you're going to do those sorts of things. But use social media to your advantage. It tends to be the best way to sell used guitars. Okay, number 4 is to have your instrument in good condition prior to selling it. This seems like a bit of a no-brainer, but the number of times I've seen people try to sell things and, it's missing a string, the neck needs a setup, or sorry, there's some crackling in the connections, all these things where you think, or it's just dusty and dirty. It's worth spending $50 or $60 on a guitar to clean it all up before you list it and sell it. Restring it, make it presentable, make it appealing to whoever is coming to look at it. So I think that's something that people don't necessarily consider as much as they should. You don't go into a retail store and look at the stuff that's in the junk pile that's all dirty and dusty and broken, and so don't sell your guitar like that. And it seems like a no-brainer, as I say, but it's I've seen it so many times where people are trying to sell just pieces of junk and not put any time or effort into cleaning them up and getting them ready for the next person. So it's worth the investment of a little bit of money to have it set up properly and restrung and all of that stuff. Make sure there's no crackling in the pots and or the connection isn't loose and all that stuff if it's an electric guitar. Acoustic guitar is the same thing, you know, have the action set up nicely. These are things that I think people don't really think about as much as they should, and it's necessary. So have your instrument in good working order. Okay, number 5 is do your research. Know what you're selling. Know the year it was made, the production, what you're dealing with here. Know the price. Try to research the price. Find comps online if you can. Sometimes if you're dealing with kind of unique instruments, sometimes it's hard to find a recent sale of that. But see if you can figure out what things are going for. Your customer's going to do that. So you might as well be in the ballpark of what they're going to look up, or otherwise they're just going to think you're overpriced. Even if that, you know, a lot of the comp thing drives me a bit nuts, because if it sold during this COVID bubble of guitars, that bubble was quite large and inflated, and stuff's just out of whack, and you can't compare a price from 2021 to right now, and that happens. But try to do some research and try to figure out what it is you're dealing with, what you're selling, and try to figure out the best price that you can where it makes sense for everybody. You know, you're making what, you know, you'd like to make, and try to make it in the realm of what the customer is going to want. And also know some information about the guitar, so that if your customer is asking you questions, you kind of have an idea about the functionality of this, or how things work, you know, how the pickups all work and things like that. So try to have some information and some research done before you sell your guitar. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you're a big fan of rock and roll and you like records, guitars, and stories about rock and roll, be sure to give us a like and subscribe and ring that bell. It helps us to grow the channel and keep more stuff coming. Thanks a lot. Okay, the next point is within reason, stick to your guns on your price. You will be inundated with lowball offers, and you have to be a little more patient to make sure you're getting what you're comfortable with getting. So if you're listing something and, you know, right away you get an offer on your guitar, and I don't know, say it's $200 less than you're asking for. If that's in the first day or two of listing, then don't take that offer, you know. Or if you're tempted and you think, I might do that, at least say to them, I'm going to give it a few days, see what other offers come in first. It makes you look a little less desperate to sell. It kind of sets a precedent that I'm not going to be, you know, lowballed here. And it makes the whole process of who you're going to deal with a little better. If you're all right to deal with somebody that's coming in at half price or something like that, then you're also going to be all right with them being a little late, or, you know, can I pay you in 2 installments? All kinds of things are going to come up. So if you set your price, stick to your guns, know what you need to make, and just stick to that. Even if it doesn't sell right away, you're eventually going to get what you're asking for. You have to be so patient, and it's hard to do that. I've been guilty of that too, where you kind of think, oh, I just want this gone. You know, I can't look at this any longer, and you want to unload it. But the more patient you can be, and the better. If you've done your research and you think this is the price I want, hold to it and see what happens. Another little tip with guitar selling is to just price it a little bit higher than what you're looking to get. There will be an expectation when you're selling a used instrument of some kind of back and forth negotiating on the price. A lot of the times, if you are so stuck on your price without any wiggle room, that might cost you a sale. But if you price it above a little bit and you kind of say, well, you know, I'd let it go for this, that's usually enticing for the buyer. So if you can do it, and, you know, it doesn't have to be a lot, like $50 is more than adequate to say, you know, if it was $8.50 and you took 8, you know, that would be at least a bit of a break for somebody. And But if all you wanted was 8, then you've done fine. And that's a little tip, just to kind of always leave yourself a bit of room, that if there is negotiation, certainly if the guitar has been sitting around for a while and you haven't had a lot of offers, sometimes that little helping out the customer will go a long way to moving your guitar for you. So just having that little bit of wiggle room in your price can be the difference between selling that guitar or hanging on to it for longer. Okay, the next point is, if you can, at all times, have a case with the guitar. Um, and I have to admit, for a long time I didn't do this, and I don't know, I just couldn't seem to sometimes part with the case. When I thought, well, the next one I buy, I need a case for, I'm going to have to go out and buy another case again. But then I started to realize, well, a lot of the ones I'm getting are coming with a case, and now I've got all these cases, and yeah, it begins to be an accumulation problem. So if you can, or at least work it into your price that you're including a case with the guitar, that really does help sell the guitar, because the next person's thinking the same thing, like, oh, I wonder if I have a case for this. So really, the guitar and the case, they're kind of all the same. They're one of the same thing, and you really should have the case in there with your guitar, so that when the next person takes it and is buying it from you, they've got the case that comes with it. Certainly with vintage guitars, you really want to do that, because the cases are expensive, and they belong with that guitar. But on newer stuff, it's less likely that matters. But if you can, and you have the original case or a case that goes with that, that's certainly recommended that you put that in there. And the last point when it comes to selling a guitar is, don't look like you need to sell that guitar. And anybody who's coming to buy that guitar, if it looks like you're desperate to unload it, then you've given them the real upper hand when it comes to negotiating the price. And some people don't like negotiating; they get nervous about it, and they just kind of panic and unload things. They have no interest in kind of negotiating or haggling a price. Sometimes people are just shy and they don't like to do that. But there's a lot of things to be said about not looking like you need to sell a guitar, even if you do. And there's been times when I've certainly needed to, and you just sort of pretend you don't, and that helps, because at the end of the day, that's picked up by the buyer, and that can really hurt you financially, and sometimes it can be very costly. So always go into the deal looking like it doesn't matter if that moves or not. And I'm quite happy to own this if it doesn't sell. And you'd be surprised how much that helps in your negotiating when you're doing this. And for this, these are tips that kind of are good for selling anything, but with guitars, there's a lot of things there that are in the negotiation that can be tough. And certainly you may have to demonstrate your guitar for somebody. So if you're a little bit nervous about negotiating or playing in front of people, I more than once I've had somebody say, "Oh, play it for me and let me hear how it sounds," because they don't want to be playing and listening at the same time. They just want to sit back and listen to how it sounds and how it's all the tones. And or they're very shy to play in front of a stranger, and they don't want to play either, especially if they're a newer guitarist or things like that. So having the ability to kind of like, oh, I'll demonstrate how it sounds, even if you're in a parking lot or whatever, it does help, just being able to have that confidence and that sort of appearance that this doesn't have to happen today. It's not make or break for me. And that can really certainly help your deal and make things a lot smoother for you. One point I forgot, and something that might be something you have to deal with, I know I've dealt with it before, is travel. Some people will ask you to bring the guitar to them. Whenever possible, don't do that. If people are asking you to drive the guitar an hour out of town to meet them, one, the chances of them showing up are probably less than 50%. So you're going to be driving all day with this guitar. There's no policing this online and things like that. So if somebody is asking to buy your guitar, they should come to you. You tell them where you want to meet them, and they can come to you if they really want it. If they want it bad enough, they will. And if they don't, or if they can't, chances are, they weren't going to buy it anyway. So be prepared for that, and be prepared for them to show up to buy the guitar with not the cash that you agreed on either. And that's where you got to hold your ground and say, no, I'm not doing that. It's a lot easier to do that when you're not an hour away from home and you've wasted all this time coming to see them. And that's a ploy that a lot of people that aren't really too cool will use. They'll have you drive the guitar to wherever they are, and then suddenly not have the same amount of cash that you agreed upon. Now, I've had instances where this has happened, and I've just taken my guitar and turned around and driven back home because I won't be, it's like being kind of held for ransom on your instrument, but or extortion, I guess. So, and it's not something that plays well with me. And that person, I feel, if I sell a guitar, I like to know where it's going. I like to know that it's going to have a good home and somebody's going to value it like I did, and that they're going to enjoy playing the guitar as much as I enjoyed having the guitar. So for me, the person at the end of the line is important, and I try to sell it to somebody, when I can afford to do so. I try to sell it to somebody that is going to take care of it and appreciate it as much as I did. So there's some simple points on selling instruments that I've used over the years. It's worked well for me. Each situation is different. Where you live changes things, and there's a whole bunch of factors there. But for me, these are things that have really helped me move a guitar on when it's time, and certainly worked well this past weekend. And it's just something that I've always got in the back of my head, this little checklist of things to do when you're going to sell your instrument. And as you do it more, you get more experienced at it. It becomes easier, and you get a little more confidence in what you're doing. But these are certainly some tips to help you sell your guitar. And if you have a guitar up for sale, I hope that works out for you. Maybe some of these tips will help. If I forgot something, please put that in the comments for anybody watching. And I'm certainly not an expert at this, but I've been doing it a long time now, and had some pretty good luck along the way. So that's part of it too. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and keep on collecting. We'll see you next time.